Good evening and welcome. If you are watching this live, it is so cool. We've got a whole bunch of folks joining us tonight. There's a small chance that you may be listening to this on the Ripples podcast or maybe watching this on the YouTubes. And if that is the case, hello. I will be putting any links to content that we refer to during the talk in the show notes. So look for those there. We do have a bunch of the regular folks who I hang out with every month as part of the Team Ripples Patreon community. And we have a whole bunch of fresh faces that are visitors with us that we're just so pleased to have. So let me tell you really quickly, if you're not familiar, uh, the Team Ripples Patreon community is a group of Ripplers who pitch in a couple bucks every month to help make it possible for me to keep on sending out the Ripples with no cost to me. They cover the cost of MailChimp, they cover the cost of the websites, and they help me print up fun little stickers and postcards so that I can just really focus on sending out the ripples. And it's been an amazing source of support because ever since the we all entered the time of COVIDia, my speaking income got chopped up a little bit and hasn't still hasn't come back to where it was before. But that's okay because A, savings, yay, and two, because I have this wonderful community who make sure that I will never think about charging for ripples and I will never think about inserting ads into ripples either, which is just so awesome. So if you're interested, we'll put a link in at some point and then I'll send you an email. For some of you who registered for tonight said, hey, no, I'm not a member, but I'm curious. And I'll follow up with you so that you can join if you'd like. Um, we've been doing this for 5 years now, and I several times a quarter we put on these little monthly Zooms. Sometimes they're topic, sometimes it's just, hey, here's some things I've been thinking about, and I'm really excited about tonight's session called Anchors of Peace and Hope. And we're going to follow a format that you are going to be familiar with. If you get the little Ripples emails that I've been sending out for 26 years now, you know what a pebble and a boulder and a ponder is. In the little emails, it's two quotes and something to think about for the week. Well, in here, the Pebble is a resource that I'm using in my work or in my life, and the Boulder is an activity that I'm doing either personally or professionally that I thought you might be interested in. And then the Ponder part is going to be the meat of our content. We like to start just like I start most presentations, and that's with a couple deep breaths where you think the word here on the inhale and now on the exhale. So I'm going to invite you to just take a couple breaths, deep breaths at your own pace, here, now. That always gets me here, and I'm ready for now. Hey, if you haven't made your way to the chat yet, I didn't say this at the top. I would love to know where you're joining us from because it is always fun to see how many ripples we're creating a little bit everywhere. So if you're in the mood, head over to the chat and just let me know where you're joining us from. And we've got see instantly we've got people from all over the place, and I love that so much. And if I stop right now and start saying hi to people that I see in this chat room, we'll be here for a whole hour just doing that. So I'm going to resist the temptation. But I see folks that I've known for a couple decades, and I've seen some names of people that I recognize, but I don't think have ever joined us before. So that's kind of cool as well. Let's talk about Pebble, a resource. And I'll tell you this, some of what I'm going to share tonight is a preview for Ripples for next week and Ripples for a couple of weeks. But the Pebble is about a Netflix series that debuted a couple weeks ago that most of us didn't know was in the works, and it's called Famous Last Words. And it's been in production for over a year now, and we don't know who the guests are going to be because the series comprises of interviews that the folks making the show are doing with older folks who are really well known to us, with the condition that no one hears the audio from the recording until after they pass away. And a couple days after Jane Goodall passed away last month, Netflix put out their first episode, which was a 1 hour interview called Famous Last Words with Jane Goodall. And I have mentioned it, I think, online several times. It is an extraordinary interview. And she takes advantage of the fact that she fully understands that no one's going to listen to it till after she does. So for the most part, she don't care. There's one thing she says, she doesn't reveal somebody's name, and she says, I'm not going to share that. But in so many other ways, she just lets it all hang out, and it's amazing. And what they did is they had 6 cameras that were remotely operated, and the audio no one was listening to, and it was kept sealed until she passed away, as per their agreement. So then they edited it together after she passed. The most amazing part of the experience is and I'm assuming this is the format for all the interviews. We'll have to see when the next one comes out. But they wrap up the interview a little bit before. It's about 50 minutes, and then the interview wraps up, and the interviewer says, as we discussed, I'm going to leave now, and you're going to have 5 minutes to look into the camera and say whatever you want to say that will, for most people, will be the last words they hear from you. And she had prepared. She knows how to give a speech, obviously. But it was extraordinary. It was a couple things that I've heard her say versions of before, but there were several things she said, and I don't want to spoil a lot of it because I want you to go. If you're on Netflix, it's so easy to find. Um, but there's this one line that I really wanted to share with you. I was sent to this world to try to give people hope in dark times, because without hope, we fall into apathy and do nothing. How can we bring little children into this dark world we've created and let them be surrounded by people who have given up? And she has become, she participated in an amazing book that has the word hope in it. I'm forgetting the title of it. And this man, Doug Abrams, who it turns out is married to somebody I went to high school with. The world is so small. And I listened to the audio recording of that book, and it's a book about hope, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. And they actually read for the audiobook, they read from these interview transcripts where they interviewed Doug Abrams interviewed her over several years. Just extraordinary. So that's my pebble, Jane's famous last words. And normally, folks are used to me dropping links into the chat during my talk. I will tell you, I have a Google Doc and a PDF all ready to give you that has links and links and links galore to save me a little bit of focus and energy tonight. The boulder. This is an activity that I'm curious for us all to try a little bit more. Some research I heard about, not completely surprising, but it was kind of cool. Some people did some research about talking to strangers, and they set up some folks in Chicago and encouraged them to go ride the L and talk to strangers. And what they found out is that people were a little hesitant to do it at first. The biggest worry being that the strangers sitting on the train wouldn't want to engage. And what they found is that way more often than people were expecting, more often than even the researchers were expecting, people in stranger situations were more than happy to engage in short interactions, just like, hey, how are you? And maybe like, oh, that's cool what you're wearing, or hey, did you know about this? And that both parties end up having a really big boost in their mood and how they feel, their outlook on the world and on life. And they were able to replicate this research in a couple other places. And I saw a really acute, I think it was an Instagram reel. I have the link in the PDF. It was one of those social medias that have little short videos. And a doctor in, I want to say Boston, Massachusetts, gives a short synopsis of the research and said, "Now I'm going to go try it," and actually goes and gets on a train and sort of captures some of the interactions she has, and it's really cool to see people sort of responding better to it than you might expect. So. Our potential homework assignment this week is to see if you can be in some situations where you have just some really light, short interactions with strangers to see. Yes, Marin put the Book of Hope, a survival guide for trying times in the chat. Thank you so much for putting that there. I highly recommend. I've only listened to the audiobook, but it was so great because it at times sounds a little scripted, but they're basically reading the transcripts of interviews that they actually did, and then they add some pieces to it that was kind of fun. So that's the pebble, and that's the boulder. And now it's time for the ponder. And I want to tell you um, I want to tell you how I created the content I'm about to share with you. I, when I put together these presentations, sometimes I'm sharing content that I've developed over the years, and it's a chance for me to either practice giving it in a virtual format or just a chance to share it with people who might not get to hear it because most of my gigs are somebody hires me to come into an organization or come speak at a conference, and I don't really do public seminar type stuff. And then sometimes it's content I'm curious to develop for a presentation. And in this case, what I did ever since I came up with the title and decided that I wanted to do this for you and for me, I've just been keeping a little Apple Note file of things that I come across that I'm using, and I haven't thought like, oh, I need to put that in the Peace and Hope Nuggets file. That this is something that is I have found that helps me find peace or helps sustain my hope. And then a couple weeks ago, I looked at it and I just sat down one day, and after I looked at that, then I put it away and didn't look at it, and I said, what do I think are the things that have been helping me stay hopeful and maintain a sense of inner peace, even though things are getting weirder and harder and harder and weirder. And that list changed a little bit over the past as I refined as I got closer and closer. But for the most part, what I ended up doing is coming up with a handful of things I'd like to say to you. And then I'd like to share with you some nuggets that some of you, including some of you on this call, including one person that doesn't even realize they shared with me something so amazing a while back. And like I said, I'm instead of notes that I have that I've collected for myself, I printed out a copy of the Google Doc that I also downloaded as a PDF after I tried to fix all the typos, so that you're going to have two options for this. So for tonight, I'm wanting you instead of needing. I know some of you would rather read or what are visual people, and I get that, but I'm going to encourage you just to listen a little bit and just know this replay is going to be available at the end of the week, and you're going to have a document, a PDF or a Google Doc to look at tonight. Um, and the first thing I want to share, I feel the need to say to people who have been hanging out with me a lot, this is going to sound like a broken record. And I was like embarrassed to say this, but it is absolutely one of the main reasons that I have been able to maintain peace and hope. And that is we got this. And in many of you know that in March of 2020, the weekend that Jamie came home and said he was going to work from home for 2 weeks, and we were all hearing that we were supposed to stay at home for 2 weeks and then things were going to get better. And then we just got to get to the summer so that the flu season will end. And it just kept going. Well, the March 13th, 14th, we came up with, we got this. If we come together with curious minds and open hearts and calm spirits while we nurture our health. And I will tell you, this got me through the pandemic. This, thanks to you all pitching in money, thanks to the team Patreon group, we have distributed over 8,000 of these stickers. And I'm going to order 2,000 more. My sticker supplier has a Good Friday sale every year. And every year I stock up on stickers. And I'm going to be giving these out for as long. And by the way, if you didn't get one, put something in the comments, and at the end of the time together, I'll link you to the form where you can order one, or I can send you one for free. Um, and I wanted to read something to you, nugget number one. Oh no, for number one, all I have to say is I want to send you a sticker if you don't have one, and I will get you a link where you can do that. Number two, and this is an extension from that first part of that sticker about curious minds, because one of the things that I really stress when we're talking about those, what we call that COVID coping for a few months, and then it became resilience content. And um, activating our curious minds usually involves deactivating our judgment. And this is what I wrote when I was first pulling this together. Judgments extinguish curiosity and they prevent us from accurately seeing what is happening, or they can prevent us from accurately seeing what is happening around us. If you are looking around and frustrated that people don't seem to be doing anything or doing enough, remember, they may be in denial, they may be in despair, they may be angry, they may be stuck. They may be taking action that isn't visible to you. They may be lost and they may be confused. They may be doing the best they can. And then I wrote, they are doing the best they can. Remember that denial and despair and anger are not only big feels, they are also stages of grief. And as we look around and we look at what's going on in the world, and we look how our friends, our family, our social media connections are reacting and responding, sometimes we feel like they're not doing enough, or are they're doing the wrong things. And if we can slip back into curiosity, I think it's easier to try to understand that to them, what they're doing may seem logical or may seem helpful, or they may be in survival mode, whereas you're wishing they were in thriving mode, and they're just not there. And when you're in surviving mode, you're just not going to be, you're not going to be as resourced as if you're able to thrive. And I can't remember if I saw Sally in the room tonight, but one of our regulars, I think she usually comes on Thursday. But a few weeks ago, Sally from Nebraska messaged me, and she had listened to something I hadn't heard of called the Grace for the World concert. I believe it was held at the Vatican, and had a whole bunch of performers. And Pharrell Williams either hosted or helped kick it off. And he wrote, or he started with a little talk at the beginning, and she sent me the link to that video, and I ended up transcribing it. And I want to just read to you a couple paragraphs from it. He said, "Too often, humanity sees difference as danger. We judge before we understand, but grace whispers, wait, and curiosity asks why." Imagine if instead of saying, "You are not like me," we asked, "What can I learn from you?" Or, "What light do you carry that I do not?" And maybe, just maybe, on the other side of that question mark is the answer right there waiting for everyone. Grace makes space. Curiosity leans in. Together, they can carry us towards one another. Grace and curiosity are not luxuries, they are remedies. Remedies for division, which there's so much of in the world right now. And so I wonder, as we pause and get ready to go to number three, is in what ways has judgment been getting in the way for you? Maybe you're using it as a defense mechanism. Maybe it's a signal that you're depleted, or that you are in fight or flight mode, and that you're not as well resourced as you normally are, and that you could just get curious about what it would look like if your curiosity vitamins were replenished. And anger, oh yes, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Anger is not a bad thing. There's so many. We talk in here a lot about emotional regulation and how so much research around emotions. They tend to label emotions as good emotions and bad emotions, and it's a little bit easier if you think of it as emotions that you like feeling and emotions that maybe you don't like feeling. But the distinction that I'm really digging is feelings that indicate met needs and feelings that indicate there are unmet needs. And number three, what I wrote down in my notes was that anger is not a bad thing. Just remember the difference between rage and fury. And what I want to share with you here is a distinction that other people may not make in the same way that I do, but I want to read to you page 74 from this little cute book that you all helped me throw together at the beginning of the pandemic when it was a pile of notes from a book I had started writing in 2016 after the election. And I wrote and wrote and wrote and then got so stuck and had writer's block and had imposter syndrome. And then 3 weeks into the pandemic, I woke up at 3 a.m. one morning and said, My God, we need hope. And you all helped me turn that into a little book. And I'm just, now that I've got the book open, let me see if I'm right that it's page 74. Oh, it is. Shut up. Okay. Um, Anger in the right amount fuels action. Remember that too much anger can burn. Wait, I just need to stop and tell you, this was not an infomercial for this book. If you buy my book and turn to page, that was not why I did this. Um, I had this voice click into my head that was like, stop trying to sell your book. I'm not. There's only 200 copies left. Um, Remember that too much anger can burn both us and others. I have a color code for the destructive and helpful kinds of anger. Red is for rage that burns destructively because it flares up and out of control. Blue is for fury that throws a flame like a blowtorch. If handled with caution, it has the potential to be constructive and weld things together. Be aware of the color of your anger. It's important that you find a way to recognize which anger you're experiencing and then channel it in as helpful a way as possible. And so, again, um, anger is not good or bad. Anger can be incredibly helpful. It is essential, it is natural, it is human. I use the words and the colors red rage and blue fury that help me distinguish between rage that fuels that's a blowtorch that helps construct things and sorry, fury or rage that's destructive that tears things up that burns things down. And as you're looking around, and if you are frustrated because people aren't as angry as you think they need to be, it could be that they're afraid of their anger. It could be that they don't understand what's going on. But a lot of times, it's because we see people's outside and we think we know what's going on the inside. If you are having lots and lots of anger, remember that it could be very much a sign of an unmet need, and it's good to figure out what is this anger? Can I fuel it towards blue, or do I need to have some help turning this red rage to work through it, to greet it, to not be afraid of it, to work through it so we can maybe change its color a little bit? Let's go to nugget number 4. Oh, there is goodness and golems on both sides. A book that I recommend that was turned on to me, if for some of my friends here in the room that might know me from NERSA, the rec sports folks, you probably, if I say Darcy Bingham, you'll know who I'm talking about. And she actually gifted me a book a few years ago, a Kindle, an ebook that was called, that was written by a guy, Tim Urban, who I think Wait But Why is the name of his blog. He was a well-known blogger. I hadn't heard of him, but he wrote this book, What's Our Problem? A Self-Help Guide for our society or for societies. And one of the things that he really unfolded for me that was really instructive is he talked a little bit about the history of conservative and progressive movements in the world, but specifically in our country and how they've evolved. And he talked about these unhelpful mass mobs that get built on each side, and he uses the word golems, like if you think of Gollum from Lord of the Rings, to talk about these big beasts that get made up of a whole bunch of people, and he talks about high rung thinking where you're using all of your brain and you're thinking in complexities, and low rung thinking where it's much more lizard brain, fight or flight, black and white thinking, very simplified, all or nothing type of thinking. And he said these golems have gotten built up on both sides. And I think one of the problems is we're less afraid of our golems than the golems that we recognize that exist on the other side, the side that isn't our political party or where our beliefs and values are. And it is really important to acknowledge that we have it too. And there are also lots and lots of well-educated, well-meaning patriots. If you're talking about our country, patriot people who love this country, care about this country, want to be part of the solution, and critically are looking at the world differently than us. And I think increasingly looking at different sources of information. They're looking up to different leaders than we are, and being able to recognize that this difference exists, and to recognize that there is good and Gollum on both sides is so important. Oh, I skipped over one. Well, that's okay. We'll stay with five. This was number five, and we're going to go back to four in a second. Um, oh, MJ, I think you are still on this call. And you texted me a couple days ago, and you texted me something, and I saw it, and I scrolled up and I saw something that you texted me a year ago when you ordered some books. And because of the text you sent a couple days ago, I saw this thing, and I loved it. And it says, if you carry one thing throughout your entire life, let it be hope. Let it be hope that better things are always ahead. Let it be hope that you can get through even the toughest of times. Let it be hope that you are stronger than any challenge that comes your way. Let it be hope that you are exactly where you are meant to be right now, and that you are on the path to where you are meant to be. Because during these times, hope will be the very thing that carries you through. Oh, so good. Thank you for texting me that. And in a rather fascinating, I can't believe I stumbled upon this. Do you remember Blue's Clues on television? So, Blue's Clues came along actually after my time as a kid, but exactly at the right time when I was going through some really big, hard stuff in therapy, dealing with healing from stuff that happened when I was a kid. And I found Blue's Clues on TV when my little inner really hurt kid was out, and we ended up watching a lot of Blue's Clues. And if you know what I'm talking about, this wonderful children's television show, this guy named Steve would look at the camera and he would ask questions, and then he would be so patient and wait, and let you think about the answer. It was so awesome. And then he kind of disappeared, and it was kind of weird. And there was all these rumors that he died or that he had gotten fired. And it turned out he was done with the show, time to move on. They decided really quickly just to replace him. I think it was that the storyline was he went to college. Well, he kind of made an appearance. He made a video on social media during the pandemic and just said, "Hey, I've been thinking about you. How are you?" And he made this amazing video, and we all fell back in love with him. And now he has a podcast. I do not know what universe, what nudge all of a sudden recommended a specific episode of his podcast very randomly. But it was a conversation he had with Jamie Lee Curtis. Amazing conversation, by the way. I didn't know she had these children's books out that are apparently very, like, amazing children's books. I had no idea. But anyway, he winds up this Fabulous conversation. I'll give you the link. You need to listen to it. It's fun. But then he's doing his little wind down where he just kind of talks and wraps things up. And he said this, and I was like, shut up, go back, write it all down. Your attention is basically a currency, and what you spend it on matters. You can spend it on outrage, and the world feels angrier. You can spend it on kindness, and the world feels a little softer. The thing is, you only have so much to spend, right? It's a finite resource. So, what will you spend your attention on today? And then he said, and he paused and he goes, "You look good, by the way." Just, I just love when he does that. And I want to keep us on track, and it's taking all this time, and that's okay. We're just going to keep moving, and I may end up saving a couple nuggets, and maybe I'll put this. Ooh, that's an interesting idea. What if I did? What if I visited half the nuggets tonight and half the nuggets on Thursday and made it a part one, part two? Let's go find number four and see what happens. Would that feel like a cliffhanger to you? No, I think I'm going to do it, but I'll just focus on number four right now. The opposite of hate is wait, before I answer that, this is a spoiler alert. So if you're somebody who does not like spoilers, I want to tell you about a book. I just realized this sentence is a spoiler. Sally Cohn, who I only know because somebody introduced this book to me about 8 years ago, wrote a book called The Opposite of Hate, a field guide to repairing humanity. And it turns out what I didn't know her as a progressive commentator who was hired by Fox News to be the sort of one of the token liberals that they had on the show to sort of beat up. And she got really good at going on that show and fighting for the liberal causes and speaking out about the issues that she cares about. And um, she was very popular on Twitter, and she was also very much picked on, trolled, like awful things were said about her because people, that kind of her job was to be the bad person. And she ended up writing this book because she decided to reach out to some of the people that had done the worst trolling to her, said the most awful things. And she ended up flying around the country, meeting a couple of them. And then she started researching. She decided to write this book, and she started researching all these really hot button where there was us versus them situations in several places around the United States and around the globe. And she ended up talking to people who were part of marriages that were people on each side, uh, Jewish and Muslim, really places where there had been awful civil wars where people killed neighbors, and then somehow some people figured out how to get along with people that were different than them again. And the backdrop of the story, she's telling the story of her own life, and she realizes at some point that she was a bully when she was younger, and that she feels awful about having bullied this one girl who then moved away, and she never found out what happened to her. And so while you're learning about all these things that she's doing as an adult, she keeps visiting back this story, and she is telling the story about trying to hunt down and connect with it. And I'm not going to say anything more about the storyline. It's really powerful, how she ties up the book. But I am going to read a sentence now that is going to answer the question in the title, what is the opposite of hate? Because it was so powerful, and it came about halfway through the book when she said, "I'm sure that the opposite of hate, close your ears if you don't want to hear this, is connection." And how essential it is, if there is any hope for us to get back into a situation where we are um, in a more humane society and we are treating each other more humanely, it is to remind ourselves of the humanity in each other. And the only chance we have of doing that is if we spend time with each other and we listen to each other without judging. And it is so hard to do that. Um, and it's worth doing. Let me see where my number three reading is. No, it's number four. Sorry. Oh, yes. John, I believe his name is pronounced Rodell, Roedel. It's some people here on this call who first pointed me to his poetry. And I just want to read a snippet of a poem that he just put on Facebook last summer. I can't make the world be peaceful. I can't stall tanks from roaring down roads. I can't prevent children from having to hide in bunkers. I can't convince the news to stop turning war into a video game. I can't silence the sound of bombs tearing neighborhoods apart. I can't turn a guided missile into a bouquet of flowers. I can't make a warmonger have an ounce of empathy. I can't convince diplomats to quit playing truth or dare. I can't deflect a sniper's bullet from turning a wife into a widow. I can't stave off a schoolyard being reduced to ash and rubble. I can't do any of that. The only thing I can do is love the next person I encounter without any conditions or strings. To love my neighbor so fearlessly that it starts a ripple that stretches from one horizon to the next. I can't force peace on the world, but I can become a force of peace in the world. I saw a little, I guess you would say it was a GIF. It was this tiny little moving meme that he posted, and it was the shortest thing. He said, "Whenever I get stuck between a rock and a hard place, my prayer is, let me be water. Let me be water. Let me be water." And his words so much are the water that helps find the little space between a rock and a hard place for me. And I'm having an instinct that I hope you will be patient with me that is literally half of the 8 nuggets that I wanted to share that I compiled, that when I practiced, I could zip through. And when I share them with you, I build in pauses and I took some tangents. And my body and my heart and my brain are telling me to pause here and let us wind down a little bit. And that I saved these other four for the Thursday session, and that everyone who attends, I'm actually already started working on ripples for next week, that it's going to be about, it's in honor to Jane Goodall, and I'm going to share the links to this, and we'll just share both links. Is that okay? I think that's a good idea. I think I like that. Um, Let me see what book recommendations, Cindy. It's just so funny. Braiding Sweetgrass. Yes, I'm loving that. Um, my friends, one of the last pieces that I was going to share, is a really powerful piece whose conclusion is that there are lots of people out there doing lots of good, and the more we keep our eyes open for that, the more we'll see. And the thing I will pause here and say to you, that almost every single thing that I read tonight, I called it, I had my little list of 8 things, and I had 8 nuggets that I was, every one of those 8 nuggets, except for one, were things that I found because of Ripplers, because of people in the Team Ripples Patreon community who either submitted the quote for potential inclusion in Ripples or posted it on something that I had posted on social media, or texted it to me. One of the things that happens when people order Ripple stuff is sometimes I will text them and say, "Hey, is this book for you? Do you want me to sign it? Or I see you ordered this for somebody else. Can I sign it for them?" And and then they have my text number. And some of them every once in a while will say, "Hey, I just saw this and thought you would like it." And um, this whole ripples thing that I have been working on 1,300, I think next week's is 84, 1,384 Mondays would not be possible. Like, I'll take credit for sending out the emails, but you times two submitted all this great content for me to be able to look through and match up and put out there. And there is no way I would be able to find my way to this level of hope, and this level of peace if it wasn't for the fact that we have a community of ripplers who are unleashing ripples of compassion and kindness all over the place. I see a bunch of you have these, and uh, I have about, I think it's about 20 of them left, that and then I don't know if I'll ever order t-shirts and hoodies again, because this was, I think, 180 people ordered them, and I was so sick of putting orders in the mail by the end. Oh, but I'll tell you what I want to do before we wrap up, and then I will turn off the recording, and we can have a little bit of we'll have a little bit of time for Q&A and chit chat. But before we wrap up, I want to say that I am going to put in the links here, and if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, oh, I'm so glad we recorded it. Oh, I've got a Google Doc that I is dynamic, that I will be able to update if I put a link bad, or if somebody shares something I can add to it. But then I know that for some people, that accessing that, it gets confusing. There's also a limit to how many people can visit a Google Doc at once. And so I had already created a PDF version of the Google Doc, and I parked that on my website. And so I'll share those links in the show notes and also in the chat here in just a second. But I want you to know, as we wind down, that if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, if you're here with me now, that there is way more good in the world, and in most people, than we believe on our saddest, most despair, most angry days. And and there is more shadow, there is more difficult, there is more yuck in us and our side than we sometimes recognize, on the really happy, good days when we're just cheering and being happy. And somewhere in the middle is the possibility that we get a little better eyesight for ourselves and for the people on our side, and we tune in to and recognize the good, and the well-intentioned on the other side, and we we can get better than we have been at meeting in the middle and not agreeing on everything, um, and not necessarily liking or even loving them, but finding the level of positive regard that is possible so we can get back to listening, to leaning in, to learning, and our curious minds and our open hearts and our calm spirits can then help us come together to nurture not just our individual health, but our community health. And what I'll do right now is say thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and ask the folks with me live to hang in for just a second.